Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rohit Menon, and it's an absolute pleasure to welcome you all to today's edition of Shared Future 5.0, Shared Pro's flagship panel series, where we bring together leaders who are shaping the future of work. And today's theme is both timely and transformational, reimagining talent in the age of transformation. We are living through a period where technology, talent, and business models are evolving at a pace we have never seen before. AI is redefining skills. Hybrid work is challenging traditional work structures, and organizations are rethinking everything from culture to capability building to leadership itself. And the core question that brings us today is how do we build talent strategies that remain human centered while keeping the pace with profound transformation? And to explore this, we are joined by an extraordinary panel of leaders, each bringing deep experience in building future ready organizations. Starting with, we have Akash Jain, a strategic TA leader with deep global experience. Akash has built hiring architectures across APAC, China, and India. His expertise spans university programs, GCC talent models, and scaling teams for Fortune 100 enterprises. Welcome, Akash, sir. We're looking forward to your insights.
Thank you, Rohit.
Absolutely.
Excited to be here.
Yes, sir. And next up, we have Aparna, ma'am, a purpose driven HR leader with over 25 years of experience. Aparna ma'am has been instrumental in shaping organization culture, transformation, and human capital strategy. She has guided fast scaling organizations through capability building and enterprise wide performance design. Welcome, Aparna ma'am. We're thrilled to hear your perspectives as well.
Thank you so much, Rohit. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely, ma'am. Next up, we have Hariharan Subramanian, an award winning HR leader. Hariharan has led people strategy, leadership development, and HR innovation across India and Europe. From IRIS to TCS, he has championed transformation programs that build inclusive and future ready workplaces. Thank you for joining us, Hariharan sir. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Rohit. Looking forward for a wonderful discussion.
Absolutely. Next, we had Srishti Lal. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to join us due to unforeseen commitments, but we truly hope to have her with us in one of our upcoming sessions. Nonetheless, finally, steering today's conversation, we have someone who truly embodies the phrase and are all about people. Madhusudan Kandaswamy, an accomplished HR leader with deep experience across marketing, IT, BPO, and even retail. Madhusudan sir has led people strategy across India and APAC in organizations like Hogarth, Scope International, HP, and Reliance. He brings strong expertise in talent management, employee engagement, and building people first cultures. Welcome, Madhusudan sir. Thrilled to have you moderate today's session.
Hey, thank you, Rohit, and it's a honor to be here in this Elite panel.
Great. And with that, I'd like to hand the stage over to you to take the conversation forward.
Thank you again, and it's a pleasure to be here. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you're joining us today. Rohit has given introduction of all of us, so we'll skip that part. And we have today a panel of exceptional leaders with us, and my role here will be to ensure we're able to gather maximum knowledge from each and everyone's learnings and experiences. So make sure you have your notepads, your notebooks on, and to make notes for how you can plan your people strategy for the upcoming years. Yeah. A quick note on the flow. We will have a dialogue for the next 30 minutes where we will interact with the panel members. This will be followed by a question and answer session for the audience. So feel free to put in your questions in the chat section or the Q&A section that during the session that we will collect, and we will answer your question during the last part of today's session. Let's dive into the session now. Yeah. The topic is on how do you reimagine talent in this age of transformation. Yeah. This demands that we challenge all our existing and old assumptions. When you think of this, I'd like to quote Peter Drucker, one of the management consultants, when he said, the greatest danger in times of turbulence is not the turbulence itself, right? It is when we act based on yesterday's logics for today's turbulence. Our goal for today's session is for tomorrow's logic. With that context, I would like to start my question with Aparna, a session with Aparna. A question to you, Aparna. How can companies today turn culture into a measurable strategic advantage, and especially during periods of accelerated growth, change, restructuring, and uncertainty?
Thank you so much for this wonderful question. The first thought that actually comes into my mind is, this is what I've seen, right, in the last so many years. Earlier, we would all have, what are the values that each one of us have within our organization, which kind of becomes your culture. It all, I still remember, usually earlier it would be on the wall, right? But just being on the wall doesn't really streamline into anything. Can we walk the same value, right? That's where it starts, is what, the first thing that I was thinking of when you asked me that question. And then what you also have to do is, then it becomes a behavior. Like how we say we have to walk the talk, right? You have to walk the culture that you want to inculcate, you want the behavior. So, and then you can measure, reward, and scale, especially just look at it today's uncertainty that's happening. How do you do that, right? And it becomes so important. So here is the way I have looked at the entire thing, and these are some things that come into my mind. One, of course, I just spoke about, translate culture into behaviors and metrics. What are some observable behaviors, that reflect how we win? Can we link them to hiring, performance, promotions, leadership assessments? How do you measure them? You could measure them through pulse surveys, feedback, skip levels, manager check-ins, and all of it. Then can you build a culture dashboard? Of course, yes, you can. If you do that, then your time to productivity of new hires, how effective is your manager? Can you get their scores? Then the cross-team collaboration index, attrition, then, of critical talent, is it the first 6 months? Or, I mean, are you losing people within 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years? What is that happening? Then finally, I think it's very important to have an inclusion sentiment and a psychological safety as well when you build a culture dashboard. So that's when the culture becomes strategic, when it's visible, tracked, and tied to outcomes. Now, fantastic question that you asked, especially during disruption. How do you anchor culture, right? I think, be it during growth or just restructuring that you hear today that's happening, one thing that I always believe is over communicate. What stays the same, what is changing, and why this matters. It's very important to reinforce rituals, your town halls, your learning hours, because these rituals will act as stabilizers in times of uncertainty. We've all gone through COVID, right? But during that time, I know what we did. Similarly, in this entire year, we've seen a lot of, uncertainty as well. So I think it's also, finally, I would say it's important to equip managers as your culture carriers, and it's not always with HR, right? So hence it's very important to invest in manager capability ahead of, be it your uncertainty, be it your growth, or be it anything on those lines. Finally, I would say the middle layer is very important. It has to be strong, because culture remains predictable even when the business environment isn't. So these were some things, that come to my mind.
I think well put across. I think you spoke about communication, and you used terms like rituals of town hall and the learning hours,
Behaviors.
which are traditional. But you said, let's put them, let's reiterate them, and let's make sure that they work. Akassh, is there something that you want to add? Akassh, Hari, is there anything that you want to add to what Aparna suggested?
Madhu, I would say that I think she has beautifully bring all those things together. From my side, I would say that it's a ongoing process. It's not an initiative. It has to be a way of life, right? And the business will trust people when they stand with the business during tough time, and people will trust business when the business stands with people during tough times. So it has to coexist, right? And leaders play a very important role. How are we creating that trust factor? It can't be just by words, fancy emails, or anything. People have to feel it. Okay, this place will take care of me. And these are not just benefits. Sometimes these are very, very light moments, but make them feel that, okay, these are the people who are, I'm sure every organization would have seen those long timers, right? Those are the people who would have been with the company during these sinusoidal curves. If these people are ambassadors, can they help us to translate and transform this culture to the new employees as well? So it has to be an ongoing process. And somewhere, if that confidence is there, that what may come, we will travel together, and then we will succeed together. I think if people are going to have that buy-in, they will be with us.
You're saying make culture muscle memory. People should just live it, right, Hari? That's what you're saying.
Exactly. It can't be on your notice boards, or it can't be your banners or your backgrounds or your email signatures, but it has to be you. It has to be you as a person.
Great.
It can't be
And
just
Madhu-
a fly on the wall or a cat on the wall, but actually the cat should be walking along the corridors and the stairs and all of it. So if you're talking about, for example, customer success, what do we mean by it? Can HR show that to their employees, saying what customer success means to them? That means it's your employee success. If we can talk that language, then you're articulating the behavior and the culture that you want to talk about from the organization perspective.
Both Aparna and Hari has beautifully talked about it, but I think couple of points which I want to bring in. If you look at the whole employee life cycle, two major points, or the two big occasions are hiring and exits. If I have to look at, right? So, how organizations are treating individuals during both of those become very, very important. A lot of times during hiring, we definitely use a lot of tools, branding, lure candidates to get and attract them to the place, but then we forget the whole exit scenario. And with the transformation, AI, all of that coming into, and we are hearing about layoffs in the organization, etc. But it is also about how we are treating those exits at that point of time. And organizations really need to understand and treat them well, even when people have been asked to move. Yeah, due to business reasons, due to technology reasons, whatever it may be, right? So I think that's something should be ingrained enough. An organization should show right level of empathy when they're doing all of that stuff too. So I think that's going to be equally important. Otherwise, the whole, in the corporate world, we are seeing a sense of disengagement from that sense, in terms of or a mistrust built between employers and employees today.
Wow. Okay. So you're saying experience, that's the key there. We have to make sure that the experience is consistent throughout, and it is not just a perception, it is not a promise, but it is something that they really are able to enjoy throughout the tenure, Akassh. So on that note, Akassh, my next question is to you, right? How can these organizations use data intelligence, not just for dashboard, but also for strategic workforce planning, forecasting, and reducing hiring friction at scale?
I think data, and we all, I think this is the world of data, and we all are talking about data intelligence today, right? And it is equally important for HR to use that data. We have been doing in the hiring front, definitely we have been using data, whether it is manual data. Now there are much more tools available in the market to help us with all of this, but we have been using data since beginning, right? In early days of TA evolution, if you have to say, right? Because that's have been the greatest tool for a TA leader, when he or she has to really, if I have to use the word, fight at the forefront with hiring managers or business leaders and prove that what is to be done, what not to be done, kind of stuff, right? Whether it's presenting the external data market to the internal world, or whether it's bringing in the right talent in the organization, data is used extensively at each and every step, right? If I look at, and I'm just talking about from a GCC perspective, because GCC is a trend and the market which is growing extensively in India right now. I think it is becoming all the more important, especially from a workforce planning perspective. A lot of global organizations today are, I think, still behind the curve using this data to do when it comes to workforce planning and really predicting the right numbers, the hiring numbers, etc., or providing the hiring projections to the ground teams to really attract or do the hiring at the right time. I think that's something is very, very critical to understand and use it from a hiring perspective. But at the same point of time, as I said, we are talking about transformations using AI today, and we are also talking about role changes in the organization, which is also effectively part of workforce planning and strategic workforce planning, right? I think still companies have a long way to go and start using data more proactively and more richly to really predict that what roles should change or transform. I think today the approach is still very, in most of the cases, is very ad hoc, um, and the decisions are done
Akassh, did we lose Akassh?
Looks like it.
Okay. Well, we get Akassh back. Hari, Aparna, is there anything that you want to add? Because Akash was talking to us on how dashboards have been critical and very critical for the talent acquisition function within HR, largely in planning your workforce, in making sure you're getting them on time, and also executing the strategy of our operations. Is there anything else that you want to add to this?
I think on a lighter note, there was a time when they would said, "Oh, AI is going to take away all the HR jobs and stuff like that," right? I mean, that comes to my mind, and I'm like, really, bring it on. I think today we all use AI. There's no two ways about it. But yes, people who don't know how to use AI can get into trouble. I would say more on those lines, nothing else. But having said that, today everyone's talking AI, but I don't think we've still got there. Nothing happens without human intervention saying you need to press that button for it to start. It's not going to just start by itself.
And trust me, it's not that simple, Aparna, yet. Possibly it'll take a few more decades to become just press the button.
Absolutely. There's nothing completely automated still on AI. If you look at it, everything is a piecemeal.
True. Thanks, Akassh. Thank you, Aparna, and Akassh, you're back. We lost you at the point where you finished about strategic planning, and but you were moving to how you can talk about forecasting.
I think forecasting is, again, it's part of strategic planning itself, right? So if you do this planning piece or the workforce strategic planning piece well using data, you would be able, I think any organization will be able to do forecasting equally well, because that's an outcome of the whole planning piece per se, right? So I think that's something, and eventually hiring, which is execution of the forecasting, basically. So these are like, I think it's a chain reaction, and how well we use data in the planning piece of it impacts the whole chain reaction in due course.
There was a
That's
time
how.
when people used to say that HR has nothing to do with data. HR is all emotion, right? And here we have leaders talking about, we have been using data for a long time. It's just that we didn't talk about it. We didn't tell you that we're using data, but HR historically has been using a lot of data, right from planning to hiring to paying it right to restructuring. And all these decisions are made based on HR data, just that we don't know how to tom-tom it, or we don't want to tom-tom it, because we want the right people to get credit there, right?
Absolutely, Madhu. And I think I'll just give, being a TA leader, I can give a couple of examples from how we have used in past data, especially from a hiring standpoint, right? It actually has impacted business decisions when we have when we have projected the right data at the right time. To our stakeholders, right? I'll just give you an example. I was with one of the pharma giants setting up their GCCs, and we were looking at setting up their one of their R&D functions in India at that stage, which was a very niche area. They were like, if you look at the globe, India data, though we were hiring for these roles for quite some time in India for almost 3 to 4 years, but this time we were talking about moving this whole team, global team, into India, which was almost 350 hires in 3 months. And in India itself, when we looked at from a TA perspective, when we started looking at the data, broadly we had around 763 professionals in that area present in India. Just that. And that was spread across, and we are talking about 350 to be hired out of that, right? And traditionally, when we also looked at the past trends, because we have been hiring for the last 3-4 years, eventually, like whenever we have hired one individual of that kind, we have interviewed almost 300 to 400 people to hire one person. And the average time of hire was like 8 months, because they were so finicky about getting the right talent and 100% fit and all of that stuff. Yeah, so that kind of a data, and we did a full-blown analysis of it. And when we went back and presented that to the global leaders about that, what you're trying to achieve, here are the roadblocks, and here are our recommendations. And the first top 3 recommendations were not just about talent, but it is about mind shift change. So it's like, guys, you have been operating as a product organization and a product R&D organization. You're now transforming to a services organization, building a GCC, GBS services here. And the first thing you have to do the shift is the mind shift from product mindset to a services mindset, and be ready to get people with like 50-60% readiness and do trainings for them. Right. That's the first recommendation which we did put on the table. Second, we did was, okay, we need to really put the campus bit of it completely onto it. And the third was a site decision, so that you're looking at to build it in Hyderabad, but Hyderabad, you will not be able to build this 350 team. We need to look at an additional site, probably Bombay, as a satellite office to really get those numbers in. And the business agreed to it and did all those changes in due course. So I think that's the power of data when you showcase it upfront with the right data. So I think
true, can't agree more. I mean, and I know when you say the numbers, how the numbers talk better than when we just talk about it as theory. Just keeping to the same point, we spoke about how the employer or the hiring organization's experience expectations are, Akassh. What are the major shifts you're seeing in candidate expectations today, and how are organizations redesigning our hiring experience to match these new expectations of candidates?
Madhu, to be honest, if you look at to the market today, even today for that matter, right, from a hiring tools perspective, right, though we are all talking about AI coming into play, ML coming into play, and different various tools, multiple tools are available in the market, but none of them till today really focuses on candidate experience. Everybody is worried about only organization experience, right? How does the organization, ease of operations from an organization standpoint, but not from a candidate standpoint. I think still there's a lot of play to really bring that on the table. And as we are talking about Gen Zs to be hired, because their experience or their expectation is at a very different level, right? They are not the ones who are in standing in a queue and asking for a job and waiting for their turn to come in. They're not in that league anymore. They want best of the experience during the process itself. From a point when from a point like ease of application, a job application itself. Can I do it by click of a button on my mobile? I don't have to log in into any system, or I don't want to log in into a computer. I just want to do it on a go. Might be sitting in a car and just doing it for myself. And just a click of button within a minute. I don't want to spend 15 to 20 minutes on a website or a career website and go and do an application, right? So that's not what a candidate is expecting today in the market. I mean, if you look at most of the organizations, few of them are slightly up ahead on the curve, but most of the organizations still follow, though their websites have become mobile friendly, but still application takes anywhere between 8 to 14 minutes. Yeah, which is a long time. And then a lot of candidates would drop in between the application itself. Right. So I mean, this is just one example, but this is the kind of experience the candidate, he or she wants to be updated about the whole process. They don't want to wait for 4 weeks to really hear back and say, no, you're not shortlisted. Right. The expectation is give me an instant answer or give me an instant response, whether positive, negative, doesn't matter, but there has to be instant. Right. So that's the kind of experience they need. Even I mean, if I look at traditional ways and legacies, right, we call for interviews, you will make them sit, you don't have much of appreciation about their times and their waitings. Candidates don't appreciate that anymore. They would say, okay, you've called me on a particular time, the interview should start on time, should end on time, appreciate my time, my personal time. So I mean, even those smaller things as an experience has to be taken care of, right? Definitely AI can be used in multiple ways into the whole process, transforming this whole experience. But I think tools have to start focusing and working on that aspect very, very clearly, right? I mean, it's similar like if you go to an e-commerce platform, when you go buy something from an e-commerce platform. Here, candidate is actually buying a job online. Can we give the similar kind of an experience to an individual from an ease of operations perspective as well as the wow factor completely?
Agree. I still remember the time when I started my career, fill the job application form, same details, name, date of birth, gender, and then fill a candidate information form, name, date of birth, gender, and then after I join, fill a employee database form, name, database, gender. You get annoyed as an individual, right? And to be inclusive, it's not just he, she. I think it's they, them. Everyone will get annoyed. We should make sure that we should be ahead of this curve. And well said, Akassh, in terms of what are the expectations. And how we need to be prepared as organizations. We'll move on to you, Hari. I'll include you into our discussion. So my question to you, Hari, is in this age of transformation, so many changes happening. How should organizations rethink their structure, the governance, and their HR or people systems to remain agile without losing the alignment or stability?
Okay. I think a lot of things have gone in one question is what I would say, Madhu, because it's a topic by itself. But the most interesting part is probably tools like AI is helping us to move away from very basic things and focus on these important topics. So probably to start with the rethinking structure part of it, right? See, we have always been hierarchical, though we call our organizations as flat. People can call by themselves by name and all that, but without our own knowledge, we've always followed that hierarchy. It will be in your approval metrics. Sometimes it will be in your mail chains, who's there in the CC, who's there in the to be copied, not to be copied level. Right? It can't be like, in a very formal way sometimes, especially in technology organizations, but it will be in a very lighter way. But we need to move more towards a very fluid structure, because we might get into a model where, instead of one big team working for a very long time, we might move to a project-based approach, so that we will come together, work for a project, work for 6 months, 8 months, and then, reinvent new teams and then work on that. That kind of model is going to be there. Plus, we also need to look at whether we can create more networked teams. right? So networking is going to be very, very strong when we talk about restructuring. It can't be, we need to empower people. People need to feel that, okay, I'm safe, I'm visible, I'm heard, even in a cross-functional team. Okay, every time if I'm going to blow my own trumpet and then make people to know that what I'm doing, instead of that, I think the systems and the processes should help people to feel that, okay, let me do my job and I'm taken care because people know what I'm doing, and it's a very visible, transparent thing. At the same time, when we are talking about governance, which is extremely the other side of the table, it has to be more, as I said, transparent, and it has to be principle based. See, we are at a fabulous time of the era where Gen Z is getting into the picture. They are the topic. Any forum, if you go to, I think all the panels will agree. Either it will be AI or Gen Z, or sometimes AI and Gen Z. But I love working with them for a reason that they will, they keep shaking us to think new. And they make things in a very much more simpler fashion to us, in a much more purpose-driven fashion to us, and a principle-based fashion. If you are going to agree to something, then stick on to it. Then it's easy to govern, right? How are you going to handle exceptions? How are you going to come up with a policy? How are you going to implement it? Let it be transparent and let it be lighter. People are not very comfortable with 10 pages of an NDA or 200 pages of a code of conduct to understand what they can do, what they can't do, right? Instead, if their people leaders are going to tell them what is expected out of them and stick on to it, I think that governance is going to be much more easier, because we are going to be like scattered across. We don't know whom we are going to work with tomorrow in a very matrix, in a very cross-functional structure. And see, people systems, I think all of us are inventing, but like what Akassh was talking about, are we going to have it more human-centric? And are we going to create systems which are going to be skills-based, competency-based, and not person-driven? Right? I think a lot of organizations have taken fabulous steps, and they are working towards that. They are working towards creating a skill-based or a competency-based system, so that I know what is expected out of me. I think that's what Gen Z wants. Okay, they don't want apprehensions. They don't want ambiguities. So how are we going to move towards a OKR based model, or a typical transparent objective based model where I will be part of the puzzle? Okay, I don't want to be a spectator. Can I be part of the system? So you need to create those systems which will help people to feel part of it. Okay, can I put a hand? Where is that puzzle piece that I'm going to solve? Okay, and that makes them feel inclusive. And the last thing that I would say is that if you are going to make it more multicultural, because you don't have a choice. Earlier we were talking about culture is only global culture. No, I think within this frame of 4 people, we know that all of us are from different diverse sectors, diverse business, diverse locations, experience. I think when we are talking, our perspectives are completely different. So imagine an organization. So are we creating that psychologically safe place so that I can voice my opinion in a much more comfortable fashion, in a much more, a safe way? I should not feel worried. If I say this, what will happen? Okay, let me say it. And anonymous surveys are not the best way to collect feedback. Or it is not going to be a best way to collect feedback. Am I creating a system where somebody can raise and say that, hey, I think we are going somewhere wrong, and it's better to collect those feedback in a much more transparent fashion? Are we really ready for it? And it's really becoming interesting when people are talking about, hey, I saw your organization was talking about this mission, but this particular work of mine is not in line with that mission. So how are we, translating? I'm like, wow, fantastic. Okay, then either I need to change or I need to explain you better. If I go back and say that, no, you're not supposed to ask that question, I think we are killing that age of transformation. So, leaders will have a huge role to play. And first of all, they don't have choice. If they say that, no, I don't want to do it, then we don't exist. And if we need to create a system which will support it. It could be HR systems, it could be our governance systems, or it could be our structures. Everything should be in line with, can I make people feel safe, comfortable, successful, and also skill-driven environment? That's what I would say.
Wow. I think for the complex answer, for a complex question, your answer was very well structured, Hari. A few key takeaways were keep the end in mind, leave the how to our employees and the leaders. I think that's very critical in what you mentioned. And you also did touch upon the point Aparna raised initially. Our leaders, our managers are going to be very critical at this journey. We may be flat, we may be hierarchical, but our managers need to be empowered to make sure that this is successful. And agree with you, can't agree more with you on this stage. Aparna, will move to you, right? Now we're talking about talent. What do you think should be next generation? What should the next generation learning experience or ecosystem look like to support our employees whose skills, roles, and responsibilities are shifting faster than how our traditional learning and development cycles can keep up with?
So, Madhu, I think this is where, I always feel today's generation, right, the Gen Zs and all of them, they have information at the fingertips. There's an information overload, right, compared to where we came from. So, from that perspective, the way we look at our entire learning journey changes. It can't be a long driven, it has to be more minute, and it has to make sense to them, right? Make sense to them in the current work that they do. It's not a future work. Future work can come when we plan for it, but currently, how is it helping them, right? I think we should also look at forget a year-long performance review. Can we look at a 12-week plan, right? 12-week is every quarter, which basically means every week is looked at as 1 month. Because of the way we need to upskill that's happening in the current environment, our entire L&D also changes, right? Our entire systems, our own thought process changes. And this is what there might be things that come up to us which we have no answer to, which is all right with the current generation to say, hey, I don't know, I will come back to you. And they are okay with that. But you need to make sure you go back and talk to them about it. It is not like it's forgotten. So I would say it's, very good times to be in, if you ask me. Because one, it's skills first and not role first, like the way it used to be earlier. So, which basically means what are the skill gaps that we find? How do you course correct? And what is the customer demand that comes up, right? So, this definitely shifts from I have completed my AWS vis-a-vis what am I doing with having picked up a AWS certification. Just a small example, right? From that perspective. And then how do I integrate? Like how I was talking about micro learnings, right? And today with AI co-pilots and all of it, your just-in-time knowledge always works. If the employees need to step out for learning, I would say the model is getting outdated. That's the way I am looking at it with the current, because you work with so many of them. That's how it is, right? And I think somewhere earlier, I still remember, right? If I had to move from a talent acquisition to a HR business partner role, one wouldn't even think of getting such an opportunity. I'm sure all of us will agree, right? How difficult it was for us to get into from a talent acquisition to an HR business. But today, that's not happening. That's not the case today. It's easy because of that information that's available. How difficult is it to know? And that's where I think I keep telling my own HR business partner folks, the team that I have, saying, one day a quarter, follow the business, see what the business is doing. the learnings that you get on the job is far more higher than what you'll ever learn, because that's on the job. No, these are some small things. I think that's how, if we don't change, and I can't say, oh, I've thought about what will happen next month. No, next month can be something different based on the demand that we're good. I come from an IT services background today. So my demand tomorrow can be very different from the demand that I have today. So how am I going to upskill?
Thanks.
So,
And I think to add to that, Madhu, I think the two pieces to really, which really defines that, right? One is the generation of the workforce. We are talking about Gen Zs, right? And their learning patterns, right? So that definitely impacts of how we are going to deliver L&D or learning to them, right? I don't think, to a large extent, we have gone beyond the era of classroom teaching now. That's kind of obsolete, to, if I have to say that, right? Their learning patterns are their tenure or the span of attention is very, very low. So they're not going to have, so they want to learn in quick snippets, say 10 minutes, 5 minutes snippets, or 20 minutes snippets max, right? Or they're not going to sit in a classroom for morning till evening to really learn a skill or go through that, right? So the whole pattern is going to be impacted by that, right? The learning pattern. And how do we deliver L&D to them or learning courses to them? The second piece is the external environment, which is the all of it has been impacted. The whole corporate world has been impacted by technology, right, today. And technology is changing so fast, right? So we need to do, so we can't wait, say, okay, I've learned this skill today, and this is going to be applicable for next 3 years. I am going to use it. No, it's not going to work, right? So you've learned something today on this project. You're on this project, you've learned something, and you're executing immediately on this project. Probably the next project which you're going to get after 2 months, you're not going to use any of those. You might need to acquire a new skill, right? And that's important. So it's very high demand, and we are not going to get, like, when you're on that project, you're not going to get like 6 months to really build that skill and execute. You're still going to get a week to build that skill and execute parallelly on the ground. So I think the external environment and both the generation impacts the way we as HR has to deliver learning to the workforce.
Absolutely. Just adding, so 3 weeks back, we thought of a hackathon. And in 3 weeks, we executed the hackathon. Because one of the things that we wanted to say, how are we going to do AI implementation? Now, that's what we realized, right? That hackathon, I had most of the younger folks participating more than the other generation, which basically means learning here now. We can even say you need to learn this. They actually went through that to say, okay, this is what I've learned on the job, to make sure the solution that I come and show you is already demonstrated. That's how the learning is changing today.
Agree. Shorter review periods, shorter learning periods, and on-the-job learning, because technology is changing so fast that you don't have a longer rope. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Aparna, Akassh, for that. Hari, I'd like to sum this up with a question to you. How can leaders design engagement frameworks that sustain motivation and belonging even when teams are distributed and roles are constantly evolving across the so many multi-generational workforce?
Thank you, Madhu. This is not a current question. It's an everlasting question that all of us are working towards. In fact, if you are going to find that one magic pill, we might lose our jobs. So somewhere this needs to be like an evolving thing. But what is more interesting is, like, even Aparna was talking about and Akassh was talking about learning pathways, whether we can create something like shorter and snippets. So when we are talking about all that, I feel that in the process of creating a very flexible environment, we should not miss out on connection. Sometimes, creating a very flexible, fun-filled environment, we miss out on connections. Connections could be like, even can I create that flexibility in a very structured way? Can I come up with things which are having clear goals for people, and then it creates a flexible career path. But if there is no path and anybody can go anywhere, is not flexibility, right? That's the assumption that people have. Okay, today I want to do this, tomorrow let me get into that role, can I start doing it? No, it's all about, can I create a system where I know what I'm doing, I know what I want to do, and whether my leader will be able to facilitate it. So as leaders, we need to facilitate that particular thing from their career perspective, and create a very structured way of handling flexibility, because the distance is becoming increasing. And that way communication also becomes very challenging, right? Because you need to have a two-way communication, you need to have it very transparent, you need to have it with a lot of high touch points, and then you need to have it techno savvy. People are not very happy with announcements. They want even podcast by leaders, they want short videos from leaders, right? They want a fun filled way of learning, because what they see in an Instagram and what they see in any social media for that matter, can I see that in my leader? Okay, so leaders have this pressure, trust me, from an engagement perspective. They also need to be techno savvy. They also need to be very good at connecting with people in a much more fashionable way, much more trendy way. Okay, so small podcasts, small Q&As, fireside chats are going to be more effective way of engaging with people. And instead of doing it to a bigger audience, can I do it for small target audience on their subject, will also be more effective, is what I feel. And I think we are very good at building teams. Our subjects teach us forming, norming, storming and all that, but can we build communities? Okay, I can be part of multiple communities for different reasons. One could be a knowledge-based community. The other could be my passion-based community. The other could be my career-based community. So, creating those communities will help people to feel more belonging wherever they are. Right? Today we have these communities which are working out very well in my organization. If I look at it, right, I know there are people who are go green. And I have some of our colleagues joining from different parts of the world, but with some common purpose. So they connect, and that makes them feel that, okay, it's not just my work. I have much more with this organization to connect with. So, instead of just creating teams, those communities are going to be important. I think we spoke about psychological safety. Which is a very important factor. Leaders have to be taught. I think we are all getting matured as human beings, and our behavioral, or our emotional intelligence, our human intelligence will play a very important role, because people should feel authentic when we speak. If they don't feel, then the connect will not be there. Because gone old days where we are expecting them to consider organization as their family. I think if they feel it as a family, they will feel. But you can't, make them feel as a family and all. You do what you want to. Some people might look at it very contractual. Some people will look at it emotional. The choice is theirs. But you need to be transparent. You need to be authentic. That's when sometimes I don't like what my mom says. I don't like what my dad says. But after some time, when I sit and realize it, yeah, I think that makes sense. And very important is I don't go back to my dad and say that, yeah, I agree with you. But still, I feel the authenticity of it, or the genuinity of it. I think genuine would be the right word, more than authentic. Leaders have to be very, very genuine in their overall communication, whether it is their purpose sharing, their goal sharing, their connection, their engagement, or their mentoring, because they need to be just they need to move to a, what do you call it? We have to invest in growth, and we have to invest in coaching, right? And coaching beyond the regular thing, beyond very, very, very typical topics. So can we create that space for people? I think that's where leaders will have, and I'm quite excited because it's going to be a very interesting, at least next 10 years of career, where you will be able to evolve all that. And what HR was complaining all this while, that okay, we are doing a very mundane job, but we are a people person. I think this is the time for us to be a people leader in true sense, because the other things, AI or the systems or the tools or the automations, will take care.
Agree on engagement. Completely agree with you in that. I think what stuck to me was humans need to have social bonding. We are all tribes. We will still be with groups, but not the groups that the organization wants us to be. And that is what we need to encourage. And I like the way you said, how can we be structured in flexibility? So thanks a lot for that, Hari. I think that's food for thought for all of us. I'm going to now move on to audience questions before we come up to wrap up the session. There's a question on metrics. I think from a data standpoint, we had Akassh, who was leading data line for us. So Akassh, do you want to take this question?
I think it's an interesting question, Madhu. So from when we talk about resilience, and that's really critical in today's world, right? With so much happening and the pace it's happening around us and around employees, basically, right? I'm being more focused on TA. I would not have much view to the resilience piece of it, and I would leave Hari or Aparna to comment more about it, if they're already doing something around measuring resilience, workforce resilience in their organizations.
I can give probably some inputs, Madhu. I feel that a lot of new ways of measuring resilience is coming up, and it is not just like what they were mentioned in the question about typical employee engagement or attrition metrics and all that. I don't know whether we have discussed about this or you've heard about this. Very interesting thing that I got to know from one of the seniors is, what is our change adoption velocity, physics and HR coming into picture. I was just referring to my notes from that senior, change adoption velocity, very interesting thing, where how your organization is ready to adopt change, how your organization is ready to adopt new tools. If you're implementing something, is people okay with it or they are not? Sometimes that some tools are not going to be successful because people are not very supportive. Or when you are doing a merger and acquisition, what is the success ratio there? So those things are going to help us to understand, because whether our workforce is really having that readiness. Are they ready to move to a different team, still make it successful? It need not be through a score. We know, right, when people are ready to move, and then how many of them are accepting, how many of them are, how many of them are taking that change as a challenge. In fact, we also even look at it, our typical utilization, because the utilization and their efforts come down when they are not happy with it. We talk about the workload scores, right? A lot of jargons can be added to it, but to put it simple, it's like, are we really utilizing people at the right level? Are they really ready to be part of that change during this resilient time? For example, if you look at it, everybody was okay to move to a work from home model. But once that wave is over, now we are asking people to come back to office. What is the acceptance level? Shows how they are, right? For example, we are shuffling the teams and asking them to report to a new person. How comfortable are they? Okay, because these are changes that helps the business to grow, and this can be measured.
Adaptability is the key, and how can we measure
exactly? So exactly, as I said in my beginning, in the beginning statement, whether they are ready to join your hand and be part of this challenge, that shows. And that need not be, see, people who are leaving the organizations are not the only metrics for us to know whether we are successful or not. Sometimes we know it could be a healthy attrition, but people who are going to stay with you are more important, and how they are going to be part of this journey. If they are going to be like, creating those small noises which will not allow you to make changes, then it's a challenge, I would say.
Agree. The small pocket-sized noises who want us to make sure that they want our success. Um, there's another question on multi-skilled career paths or talent. Aparna, can you take this question?
Definitely. I think I think we have already spoken about this before, and here is what I always say: rotational, right? Change of projects, different roles that one can play, and it's not always horizontal. It can be even across, right? There's no vertical roles all the time. So someone from a technical standpoint, if they want to get into project management, they should be able to do that. And from there, how do you come back? Because you want to explore how every role will be different from the role that you're playing today. From a talent acquisition, can I move to HR business partner, which is very different. Where from a talent acquisition, if I'm only talking to candidate sourcing, but at a HR business partner role, I'll be more connecting within my own organization. It's internal to external. So the understanding that you get there will be far more higher, and the value that you bring in will be a lot more. It's not very difficult. Why do we make it difficult? I think internally our systems make it difficult for people to move. And we say, no, 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 I can't let the person go. He's critical. Until then, you are okay to let him go. But the minute he says, I want to move to another role, we'll say, sorry, I can't let him go. All of that. So I would say, make it like, I don't know whether it was Akassh or Hari who said, make it flexibility with the structure. I think that's what we need to do in most of the stuff that we do today. Bring in flexibility. I think it's somewhere in our mind saying, oh, I have a process to follow. Someone has to be in that role for 2 years. In the current generation, right? In the startup world, for example, after 6 months, they want a promotion. It's not like the traditional organizations where you need to be 2 or 3 years before you get a promotion. So things change. I think today the generation looks at it very differently. Can every day be a challenge for me? And it's not just India. I have a son who lives in the US. And he says today boring. I'm like, why? Same thing I did. I'm like, huh? Then I don't know what happens to all of us who keep, if you've been in the HR field for the last so many years. If you're doing talent acquisition or something, that's something that we've been doing. But yes, it changes from organization to organization. So, yeah.
And to that question, well said, Aparna. I think there's a new path-breaking concept that I would like the audience to read about. It's called M-shaped talent. We are moving from the concept of T-shaped talent to M-shaped talent. Read about it whenever you find time. It's very important of us as HR and as leaders and as employees also to know about, because that's how we think the markets will move towards multi-talented, multi-skilled workforce that organizations will need. Yeah. Thanks a lot to the entire panel for this fascinating discussion. I have a greater sense of clarity from what I was about 30-40 minutes ago, and I'm hoping that we've been able to leave our audience also with a similar feeling. Our discussions of today reinforce the principle that someone we know about stood for. This person was at the intersection of technology and humanity for us. This is none other than Steve Jobs. He once said that technology is nothing. What's important is you need to have faith in people, and you need to trust that they're basically good and smart. And if you give them the tools, they will do wonderful things with them, right? And that, I believe, is the heart of reimagining talent. It's about having faith. It's about empowering smart people with the right tools and creating an environment where they can do wonderful things. And this is what has resonated in today's discussion that the entire panel has been able to put together. I want to thank each of the panel members for wonderful thoughts, your experiences, and your ideas, and hand it over back to you, Rohit. Thank you all.
Great. So, just before we close, I'd love to quickly hear from our panelists and our moderator. Like, how was the session for you? And what's the one thought you'd like the audience to take away with?
From me, I would say, Rohit, first of all, thank you, Madhu, for facilitating in such a nice fashion. It helped us to think when we come back, and then somewhere, probably in a side note, okay, can I make Madhu happy with my answers was also a factor that was there in our mind, at least in my mind, I would say. From my side. Good is like we are coming from diverse industries, Rohit, but the common challenge that are there in the plate is there. And this team echoing a lot of things that I feel, then I feel that, okay, then I'm not thinking wrong or I'm not in the wrong path. I think this problem exists in the other industries as well. So can we, learn from each other so that instead of just a complete solution, somebody has created half solution already, can I adapt it and then focus on the other half and customize it for my organization? That was my takeaway. And some of the questions were like really interesting, very well thought questions. Thank you.
Anything from you, Akash, sir?
I think the whole conversation was enriching, a holistic view of HR, from hiring to engagement to resilience and development, as well as exits. We talked about almost everything. I think great. For me personally, it was a great learning from Aparna and Hari and Madhu with their thoughts on the conversation. I'm sure the audience would take a lot of it with them too.
Aparna, ma'am, anything from you as well?
I think I was just thinking of Madhu and we were chatting he said this. What's the single most effective way for companies to retain valuable talent when the career paths are no longer linear, right? With that, I think this is what I would want to say. Sorry. The single most effective way to retain valuable talent for any organization when career paths are no longer linear is to create a fluid, opportunity-rich internal talent, build a marketplace where employees can continuously grow, have projects, roles, skill building experience without waiting for a promotion. This is where I always say you don't need a title to lead, right? But all you need is growth, relevance, and purpose. That's what you need.
Great. Lastly, just Madhu, sir,
But I would say it's been an amazing conversation. And thank you, Madhu, for moderating it so very well. And amazing learning from both Hari and Akash. Thank you, Rohit, and thank you, Vikas, for inviting me to be a part of this panel.
I think the credit remains with the three of you. It was easy because all of you had answers. I had just the questions, right? And thanks a lot for being patient. And Rohit, I can't tell you one takeaway. Having heard all the answers, I have quite a few takeaways. I've made notes. I'm going to read them out, right? I heard some incredible insights today. How culture becomes muscle memory, data-driven HR, how your work has to do the talking, not you, how end is communicated, how it needs to be clear, and how leave the means to employ the managers. You need to do project-based reviews and not time-based reviews, and how you need to have flexibility within structure. So many takeaways for me, just to quote a few that stood out for me. But thanks a lot for this opportunity, and I think it was a great session.
Not to forget, I'm also going to read about T talent to M talent. Nonetheless, okay, so I'll just conclude over here. So, as we conclude today's edition of Shared Future 5.0, the one message is clear, right? The future of talent is here. It's faster, it's more dynamic, and it's more human than ever. I'd like to thank all of the panelists, Aparna ma'am, Hariharan sir, Akash sir, for your insightful perspectives, and our moderator, Madhu sir, for leading the discussion so seamlessly. I'd like to thank you all for being a part of today's conversation. And we look forward to having you with us again in the next edition of Shared Future. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Bye.